Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach and we're going to continue on with Pony. I think I'm going to do this episode and then I'm going to switch back to doing some analyzer work for CSLA and then I'll come back to this. I don't want to stop too much on this because if I go for too long, I'm not going to be able to really get this in my head. I'm also going to try to find a couple of books or sites that have programming problems on it just to see how I can solve them with Pony. That probably means that the playground that I'm using here, there won't be a lot of opportunity to go too far with this, because if I want to do file I/O or if I want to do something like that, this isn't going to work. So I'm going to have to look into how do you actually get the compiler onto the box. But all that said, anyway, let me go through what we did last time. I think we got to variables, which locals and fields, and vars and lets, and the underscore being as private. And it finally dawned on me, why don't you have protected? Well, I don't think there is no concept of inheritance in terms of, like I said, they favor composition over inheritance. If you don't have inheritance, there's no need for protected. So these are really the only two that you need. Maybe there's a concept of internal, but anyway, so they're probably trying to save on keywords. So whatever. Still don't know what embed really is. I don't quite get my head around that. I like that there is no global variables and there is no shadowing. Operators is pretty straightforward. I do actually like this precedence thing. I can understand where this might come across as annoying, but being explicit about what operations happen first in your code, I think, is a good thing. So I kind of like that. A lot of stuff with arithmetic. I do like the checked and the partial, that you have a lot of choice here in terms of how you handle arithmetic operations. Control structures, pretty much everything that is expected, though I like that everything is an expression. I actually thought about this and I'm like, it's never really fully set in my head. What is a statement and what is an expression? When you have, it seems like C# is getting more expression-like, especially with pattern matching. It seems like there's more things that are, this can be an expression and this can be an expression. And I don't know what the ramifications for that are in terms of correctness and compilation and parsing and all that other stuff. But there is something to be said to do like what you see there, which is you can just inline, if lots is a variable, then you can do something like that. That I think there's something kind of cool about that. You can do whiles, fors, and also repeats. Okay, so let's move on from there and get back over here. And let's see. Oh, I did want to show this too. Like, I looked in the FAQ and I was like, well, where did this all come from? I'm not going to go through all this. There's a early history of Pony here. And it is kind of interesting. I would recommend reading about it. So what's interesting, and just because it's interesting, is one, the guy who wrote this apparently is this guy. He works in Microsoft Research in the Programming Languages Principles Group. So, okay, kind of interesting. I guess somebody, I don't know if it's this guy or somebody else, but back in the flight sim days, when I wrote a programming language, one time when I gave him yet another laundry list, he said, yeah, and I want a pony. Also, here he likes horses. Okay. Just thought you want to know. Let's move on to methods. Okay. So, yes, methods. Functions, constructors, and behaviors. Functions are fun. Behaviors are B and constructors. Yeah. So, they're tapped to type definitions. There are no global functions. Okay. Although if you have a primitive, since there's only one instance of a primitive, okay. So all code must be within a method. Yep. Pony functions are quite like functions. They have 0 more parameters and 0 or 1 return values. Well, what happens if you want to return a tuple? I don't know why they have that as a restriction. Why can't I return a tuple? Well, I don't know. That seems a little weird. You'd probably want that. The function parameters, if any, specified in parentheses, the function name. You still need the parameters. Each parameter is given a name and a type. Add as2. Return type, if nothing we return, this is simply omitted. I'm assuming it would be pointless. We ignore the result. Really? Because you don't have a return value there? If the return type is omitted, then the function will have return. So it's not inferred based on what you do in the code. That's because they infer tuple types, or I'm sorry, not tuple types, union types out of like if expressions. You can have like string or none or string or int, or something like that. I32 to be pony correct. So I'm surprised they don't do that here and say, well, add would return a U32, so why wouldn't you return that? Because it returns a U32. I don't know. Anyway, you can't assign to parameters, they're essentially lets. That's good to know. Okay. Function body. If you want to exit a function early, then use a return command. The function has a return type, then you need to provide a return value to return. The function does not have a return type, then return should appear on its own without a value. Will functions by argument type? No, you cannot have multiple methods with the same name in the same type. I actually like that. I've been hearing things about language features in C#, and if a new language feature requires one to visit how just method overloading works, the number of people that have to review it goes up. The rules are so complicated around it, and for the most part, for the simple cases, it doesn't matter. But it's not too hard to get into things that are complex and to get your head around, well, how does this method resolve? It can be difficult. Whereas if you just don't have method overloading, and you just give it a new name, then you get rid of it. There's no ambiguity. I think Eiffel does the same thing in that you can't have method overloading. You just create a new method by having a new name. So I get where that can come across as maybe a little ugly, but at the same time, it's clear and unambiguous, and you don't have to spend so much time figuring out, well, what method would this actually really call? So I kind of like that, actually. Constructors. It's interesting. I just watched. There was a language review or language overview for Jai, the language that Jonathan Blow is creating, and I find it funny that he doesn't call the language that, even though it's JAI for the file extension. He just keeps calling it the programming language or the language. Whatever. Okay. Maybe there's a reason. I've kind of stopped watching all of his programming streams because, one, I don't really know what he's doing. It's honestly beyond me. I can't follow it. It doesn't make sense. And he can get to ranting too much, or at least ranting about things that I feel are taking away from the conversation and taking away from the stream. So some people like it. I find it I find it annoying and distracting. I'd rather see him, because the guy is obviously smart. The guy is very perceptive, and for lack of a better phrase, thinks a lot about how to design things and how to implement things. I've said many times, The Witness is probably one of the best games I've ever played. I loved playing that game. It was just, it had such a charm and such an interesting design aesthetic, and I didn't have to sit there and think about how many, who do I got to shoot this time? It wasn't that way at all, and I really, really liked the game. It spoke to me, for lack of a better phrase. And I am interested when the language finally comes out to maybe play with it like I'm doing Pony. Some of the metaprogramming aspects that kind of hinted at seem really, really interesting to me. But I just can't watch the streams anymore. I find them just to be, not the, and not like what I do is entertaining and interesting to listen to. My God, I've been going through a tutorial for the last 4 or 5 episodes, but it's just something that I've found that it's kind of just not fun to do. That being said, when he did this recent update to the language. That I actually found really interesting because it's focused. He usually has a couple slides with the slide program that he wrote, and it's got a kind of a good structure to it, so it doesn't veer off from that. And I find that to be quite interesting. Wrapping that back to what this is, they just mentioned that they're removing constructors and destructors from Jai. So it's like, okay, whatever. He's not a big fan of object-oriented programming either, which I don't get the hatred of object-oriented programming. It is a technique, just like functional programming, it's like aspect-oriented programming, just, like everything's a tool, and sometimes it's a good tool and sometimes it's not a good tool. Sometimes I use inheritance in C#, and sometimes I really don't. The thing that I want from any programming language is strong typing. That's what I really favor strong typing over dynamic or weak typing. And not to say that it doesn't have its purpose, but I personally find that to be, it's safer, more elegant. It feels like I have a better understanding of what the program is going to do, and that I'm not going to run into weird errors at runtime. So that all said. Anyway, so constructors, pony constructors. We've run into these before, and you put the new. So there's new fun B. So new means it's a constructor. Yeah, taking whatever parameters you like. By convention, the main constructor of each type, if there is such a thing for any given type, is called create. So that's by convention. But you don't have to. I think we saw that if you did if you created a new object, if it was create, you wouldn't call it create if it was something else. But again, there's no operator method overloading, so you have to have a new name for it. So I get why it does this. You can't also say like foo here and foo. Well, you get what I'm trying to highlight here. You can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, and this is private. Yep, you know it. Okay. So you just use return. Calling methods. Excuse me. Parentheses are required even if there are no arguments being passed. That makes sense. I agree with that. Yep. Pretty easy. Instructor. I'm wondering, maybe I'll mention it later. I'm wondering if functions are first-class citizens as well, that you can actually assign variables to functions and call those. We'll see if that actually is a thing or not. Constructors are usually called on a type by specifying the type that is to be created. To do this, just specify the type, followed by a dot, followed by a new constructor. Yep. So you can call for create or foo from it. Makes sense to me. I kind of like that. Yeah. And again, this should be type inference, so you shouldn't have to say that it is a foo. Okay. Functions are always called on an object. Again, just specify the object, followed by a dot. If the object to call on is omitted, then the current object is being used, i.e. this. So if you said G, so is this actually a thing? Can you actually use this? So I'm kind of curious about that, because it said i.e. this. So let's actually, did I save that as one of my, that I have it right here? Because remember the last time I was lamenting because I didn't have it right. Yeah, okay, that's the right one we want. So good thing I should put all this stuff up too in a GitHub repo. Okay, so if I had class person and I had a function fun function, I don't really care. Let's be a little bit more abstract here. Fun bar, and let's just say it returns U64. Let's say 22. Okay. Are there such things as private functions? I don't know if they actually said that. Or all the functions public? Let's say function quux, which returns a U64. Can I say this dot bar? So we're going to do a let f be equal to foo dot create. I think that's fine. Environment dot out dot print f dot bar string. Am I right? I am. And so, okay, so this is a thing. If I took that off, same thing. Perfect. And can I make bar private? Confine bar. Oh, wait a minute. I'm returning the wrong thing. But that's actually good. So let's do Quux here. And that showed that it's private. Okay. Which returns 22. But I can also be explicit and say this dot bar. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So this is a thing. Alrighty. Constructors can also be called on an expression. Here an object is created the same type as a specified expression. This is equivalent to directly specifying the type. Oh. Here an object is created of the same type as a specified. Really? That's weird. I have to admit, I'm not sure I like that. Because you already have you already have an object. And now I'm going to say a new one of the type. I don't get why you'd want this or why you want to do that. That looks confusing to me. I get it's just a function, but it returns a new instance of a foo. So, not sure I like that. But anyway. Default arguments. Defining a method you can provide default values for any of the arguments. The caller then... Oh, this kind of looks like overloading. The caller then has a choice to use the values you have provided or provide their own. Okay, so this is 0, 0. Okay. Do I have to provide default? No, you can provide it for as many as you liked. So maybe they're going to talk about this because do these have to be after? Like in other words, if I said, let's do a coordinate, and I said, I want to do var let. Let's do let x, which is a u64. Okay. Let y be a u64, and let z be a u64. And then we're going to say new create, where I could have x, which is a u64, be equal to 0 as a default, y, which is a u64, and a z, which is a u64. I don't think it's going to allow this. I think it's going to bark. It's x, y, y, z, z. And then how do they... There's no concept of a property. I could make these public and then you could just... Well, yeah, why not? Why not, why not? Why do I keep saying that? I watched Henry Rollins once say that. So let's do a little ticky tick thing. Put those in here. And so now let's do let coordinate equal to coordinate dot create. If I pass in a 2 here, is that even legal? Not enough arguments. Yeah, I would imagine what you could do is if I did this and said is equal to 0. Now if I run it, yeah, it's fine. So you have to have the optional ones afterwards. Named arguments, positional arguments, however you can also specify arguments, named arguments. Where, okay, so use the where keyword. Okay. So again, name the positional arguments you can use together in a single call. Just start with the positional arguments you want to specify, then a where, and finally the named arguments. Okay. Default arguments can also be used in combination with additional named arguments. Just miss out any for which you want to use the default. So f of 6, 7, where d is equal to 8, so you would do a and b 6 and 7, and then you'd skip C, which would be 3, D would be 8, and then 5. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. Can you use positional use positional arguments? They must be the first ones in the call. Method chaining allows you to chain calls on an object without requiring the method to return to its receiver. Method chaining allows you to chain calls on an object without requiring the method to return its receiver. The syntax of call method and change your receiver's object.method. So if I call, okay, so out print print equivalent to out print 1, out print 2, out. Without requiring the method, oh, I see what's saying. So maybe print doesn't return the standard stream, but by doing this chaining operation, you're saying, oh, by the way, take the out and put it there and print it. And since so you're basically saying if you chain, call that and then bring that over. So print S2, you call that and you bring out, so out would come out. So that makes kind of sense. And so that's kind of because there's what are they called? Fluent interfaces, where you basically set up something so that, especially in extension methods in C#, they'll have where the return value will be the actual thing that you passed in. And you don't have to do extension, but that's just an example. The point is that you can then chain a bunch of calls together. This isn't forcing you to do that. This is just saying, oh, by the way, I want to chain them myself, and whatever that returns, I'm just going to ignore it, I guess, and then do that. Kind of interesting. I like that. Chaining would be the return value last call matters. Okay. So in this case, I have an interface, I have a primitive, which again, primitives can have functions. So we have a function here that returns an object. We haven't talked about object. Is everything distinct from object? Maybe not. This returns a factory because F is a factory, and so you keep chaining it, and then chaining it's going to return it. That's not what we want. We want to chain it, but the last one, which make object returns an object, that makes perfect sense. Okay. Pony has anonymous methods. Yay! Or lambdas. They look like this. So we use collections. We're going to get there in a moment. Hopefully soon. So we can do list of numbers, which is a list of a generic U32 from 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can basically give it 1. Okay. Let is odd equal to, whoa, what the heck is that? Is that how you define a lambda with the curly braces? So is odd is a lambda that takes a number and returns a bool, and it says if the remainder divided by 2 is equal to 1, then return a true, otherwise false. For odd number and list of numbers, filter, we're going to kind of that link syntax, let's passing in this values, object literal section, so we'll probably get there. Okay, and I'm guessing you could probably have a function in your code that, let's do that. Let's play with that. So let's come over here and do that. And let's grab this code. Okay, and let's just run it first to make sure it works. And it does. It took a little while, but it does. Okay, let's actually say fun of my is odd, which takes a number, which is a U32, and returns a bool, which, I just copy your code, right? Like that. Okay, so let's now that, and now pass in my is odd. Does that work? No. Can't reference a method without calling it. Argument not a subtype of parameter. Argument type is a function. So it has to be a... Okay, well, maybe I don't know enough about what this is supposed to do. My is odd, passing that in. And say, IntelliSense, I want to know what these things do. But I don't. Taking in a... Well, let's just make sure that that is not screwed up. Oh, it doesn't know it is odd now. Okay. So yeah, it's not the function definition. It's just, I guess this is not right, or I'm not doing it right. Yeah. That's okay. We'll learn as we go. Okay. So lambdas, you just basically put the curly braces around it, and that's how they work. Privacy. I think we tried this already and found out that this works. You cannot have 2 underscores. There's only one. So those are private. Methods without leading underscore are public, called by anyone. Precedence. Precedence. Method calls and field accesses have higher precedence than any operators. Unary operators have higher precedence than infix operators. Parentheses specify precedence explicitly. Okay, and at this point I'm going to stop because we're almost near 30 minutes. So, good progress. I'm going to put I'm actually going to remind myself to put a to-do in here and say, we're still in expressions, aren't we? Yes, we are. So, to-do, I'm going to write a lambda. Summarize through methods. Okay, so the next time when I do my little revamp, I can remember where I was. So, kind of cool. This is fun to me. This is actually a lot of fun, and learning about a language that, one, I have like a 99 point, I don't know how many nines after a chance of ever using this on a project. But there's something beneficial to this because I think there's things in this language that make me go, I wish I had this. You know, I wish I was able to use some of these things in a language. So the more to learn, obviously. I mean, my God, look at this. We're just in expressions, and we have to go through reference capabilities, object, generics, pattern, blah, 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 all this stuff. So there's a lot more to go through. So more to love about Pony, or maybe not love, but we'll see. So thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.